In our previous lesson, we learned how to load data into Power Query. In this video, we are going to learn about the different data types and why is it important to have each column in its correct data type. Before we proceed, I'd like to save our file. To save our file, simply head over to the Save icon, which is located in the top left corner. There is a pop-up message from Microsoft telling us that none of the steps we have taken so far have been applied, meaning that we must apply the changes. Otherwise, our file will not keep the data or any of the steps. Click Apply. Once we click Apply, Power BI starts loading our data inside our Power BI file, meaning that it creates a cached copy of the data inside a Power BI file. Specify the location where you want to have your file saved. Choose a name for the file. I'm going to call mine Data Types and hit Save. Now our file is saved. We can continue with our transformations. Power Query has got 12 different data types: text, true false, decimal number, fixed decimal number, whole number, percentage, date time, time zone, duration, and binary. If this is the first time you come across data types, you may feel a bit intimidated. Relax. Just because there are 12 types does not mean that you should expect to work with all of them. However, we're going to cover each data type to make sure that by the end of this lesson, you will feel confident choosing the correct data type. I'm going to switch over to Power Query and select the Change Type step. Did you notice a change? Let's try again. I will click on Promoted Headers. Have a look at the beginning of each column. Do you notice the ABC123? This data type is called Any. Any is assigned by Power Query. However, Any is an abstract data type, meaning that it can show all possible values, but it does not allow us to perform any operations. For example, if you have numbers and you wish to make a sum, the sum will not work because data type Any is not a number and only numbers can be aggregated. Any is not a data type that should be used and is not available to select from the data type option. If I go to Change Type, we notice that the ABC123 is now transformed into 123, which is for a numeric data type. The text is now shown as ABC. We also have a calendar icon that represents date, and so on. It is important to have each column in the correct data type, otherwise you will run into some problems with your data. Power Query is clever enough to automatically suggest data types based on the values stored inside the preview window. If we select a column, we can see what data type it is by looking at the data type inside the Home ribbon. For example, Customer Alternate Key is data type of text. Customer Key, on the other hand, is of data type whole number. Data types can also be manually changed. For example, if I select Customer Key and I go to data type and change this to text, Power Query will accept that. It's going to ask me if I want this change to be included inside the current step or if I want to add it as a new step. I would prefer to add it as a new step since I would want to revert the change back easily. So I'm going to click Add New Step. So now Customer Key is now transformed into data type text. However, if I select Customer Alternate Key, which is currently data type text, and I want to change that to decimal number, do you think this will work? Let's find out. So I change to decimal number and boom, all of a sudden we get this error. So what does the error say? The error say we cannot convert to number. Why? Because this value is text. Let me explain. We are trying to convert AW. AW are letters. They cannot be converted into numbers. It doesn't matter that we have numbers after AW, even one character that is different type is enough for Power Query to run into a problem when converting to data types. We don't want to see this error, so I will remove this step. By the way, this is one of the reasons why Power Query is so easy to use. If you don't like a specific transformation, all you need to do is select the step and click on the little X icon. This will remove the step and revert back to the previous one. In Power Query terms, any data type can be converted into text. A good example is numbers and dates. If we change the data type of a number into text, we would still be able to see it. However, we will not be able to apply aggregations, such as sum or average or any other, because to Power Query, this is text, and text cannot be summed. Whilst with numbers, as we just saw in our example, this is not the case. Numbers only accept numbers as arguments. Next is Boolean values. Boolean values can only return true or false. They don't get used often, because they can only be applied to columns that contain only true or false as values. If we try to apply Boolean on numbers or any other text, we would get an error. Next we have decimal number, which is designed to handle numbers with fractional values, but it can also work with whole numbers. For example, if I change the yearly income column to decimal number, you will not see any changes in the way it is displayed, because it is a whole number, and Power Query is handling the decimal number as a whole number. However, if we change this decimal number to fixed decimal number, we're going to add this as a new step, our yearly income is now looking more like a proper decimal number, and that is because the fixed decimal number data type is specifically designed to handle currencies. On the right, it has 4 digits to avoid rounding errors. In our case, it's only 2 shown because we don't have such fractions after the second 0. Next, we have whole numbers. It has got no digits to the right of the decimal place, and it allows for both positive and negative values. If we go back to Power Query and I change this from fixed decimal number to whole number, I'm going to add this as a new step again, and we can see the yearly income as a whole number. Next we have the percentage. Now, percentages are normally calculated inside Power BI. It's very unlikely for you to have percentage data type imported from the database. It's something that gets calculated using DAX. So this is very unlikely scenario. However, if you have percentage, the display number is almost the same as decimal number, except that it adds the percentage symbol. Following percentage, we have datetime. Datetime is amongst the most common data types used in Power Query. Why? Because it shows the date and it also shows the time. Let's have a look at our birth date. So if I highlight birth date, we can see that the data type is currently date. If I change this to date time, it should be okay. By default, birth date column does not contain time. And when we convert a date column into date time, Power Query will suggest that all these dates happen at the earliest possible time for each date, and that is 12 AM. This is a default setting and it cannot be changed. Next we have date, which represents date only and does not store any time value. This is the default data type of birth date, as we saw in our example. We also have a time data type. It represents just the time without the date. I am going to use our converted birth date column for this example. So if I change the type to time only, the date portion will get removed and we will only see the values after the date, which represents the time. We also have date, time, time zone. It shows the UTC date time with a time zone offset. Once we import the data into the model, the UTC time zone disappears and we only get to see date time. We also have duration, which represents a length of time. Again, this is one of the data types that will get rarely used. However, if you have a data set that contains a date type of duration, Power Query will convert it into a decimal number when it loads the data into Power BI. The last data type available is binary. Binary data types are only available in Power Query. They cannot be loaded into Power BI dashboard or data model. It is unclear why Microsoft have decided to give us a data type which cannot be fully used. To summarize our lesson, the most important data types you will use in your day-to-day analysis would be text. And text is an alphanumeric combination. It can be name, email address, relationship status, etc. Followed by date or date time, followed by whole numbers to show a number of sales, let's say, because sales can only be whole numbers. We cannot have 10.4 sales. Last but not least is the decimal number or fixed decimal number, depending on how precise you want your numbers to be.